I need to do this at the start. I need to apologize to the fan base of the Ottawa Senators. Last summer, yours truly made statements about the state of the team that were wrong. Absolutely, categorically, proven time and time again, wrong. The Ottawa Senators were a very resilient team, a very good team, and managed to get to the Final Four this past spring. And their roster for 17-18 looks very similar. So I would be a giant pain in the... I would be a giant son of a... You guys are chiming in with words, right? It's swearing with the hockey guy. Yeah, I would be basically trolling at this point if I didn't admit they're a good team and didn't apologize up front. You know, to me, they missed the playoffs. Ottawa fans were like, "Well, we're the best out of all the Canadian teams that missed the playoffs." And my answer to that was, "But you all missed, so it doesn't really matter." Now, the best team in Canada this year, record-wise, was Montreal. You know, I got Montreal fans upset, and I understand their point of view, being upset over how I have predicted this coming season. It's not easy. This whole idea of predicting out how the roster is going to work out is not easy. And people always point out, you've got your roster wrong. I look at a couple of different sites and I go, this one's probably close. And then I make tweaks. But how many rosters look the same at the end of the year as they do at the start? Almost none. And just because a line works one year doesn't mean it works the next. The HBK line in Pittsburgh is an example of that. The West Coast Express in Vancouver is another example of that. Great lines. Sure. Did their job, and then things got tweaked and moved around. Guys moved around. Maybe you put that line back together later. But in general, these lines aren't set in stone. That's why I don't bother. I just look at the roster and go, all right, your best left winger's Hoffman, your best center's Turris, your best right winger's Stone. That's who I'm putting at the top. That's the tremendous secret. I may change it around a little bit, but in general, I just go with best to not best. But I wanted to get that out of the way first. I do sincerely feel that I got Ottawa completely wrong. So why did I get Ottawa wrong? Well, I underestimated Craig Anderson in that I underestimated just how popular he was with his teammates. When Craig Anderson had to leave the Ottawa Senators to tend to his wife, who was dealing with cancer, I underestimated that Condon would come in and play fantastic and that the entire team would rally around Anderson. Teams sometimes do and sometimes don't, and it's nothing against the teams that don't. It doesn't mean they hate the player. It's just some teams rally better than others, and Ottawa definitely did. Craig Anderson is the inspiration of 2016-17. Him and Brian Bickle both together, for me, were the inspiration of 2016-17. Anderson helping his wife, Bickle dealing with his issues, and his wife supporting him. There's a lot of similarities between the Bickle storyline and the Anderson storyline in terms of overcoming that adversity and making the best of it. And while Anderson's may not be as... I don't know, is it as inspirational as Bickle's? On some level, sure. When I did a top 20, I think it was top 20 most inspiring stories of the playoffs after the second round, I had most of the Senators on that list. It's fantastic. I got things wrong because Clarke Macarthur being out did not affect them at all. And when he came back, they got better. I was wrong because I didn't like Bobby Ryan, and while Ryan's stats weren't great, he didn't hurt the team either. I said I didn't see a number one center. Turns out it didn't matter. It's a committee. Ottawa's a committee in terms of its four centers. And what's going to be interesting in training camp is, what does Colin White do? Colin White isn't going to put Turris, Brassard, Pajot, or Smith out of a job. He's not going to put Hoffman, MacArthur, or Burrows out of a job. Does he put Tom Pyatt out of a job? Does he move over to that wing? He's not going to move Stone, Ryan, DeZingle, or Thompson out of a job, so is that where he goes? Nate Thompson didn't sign with this team to get waived. He signed with this team to come over and play for Guy Boucher again. And he brings something to the lineup that they needed. They just signed Ryan Dzingel. I think, if they were honest, I think they'd be willing to trade Bobby Ryan right now. Considering his production and his cap hit, I think they'd be totally willing to move him. But at that cap hit, he's unmovable. I remember Ottawa fans, and I have a history of not making them happy, saying there's no way in hell Vegas is going to touch Bobby Ryan's cap hit. I don't care what he did in the playoffs. It's regular season, and he's not going to be a Vegas Golden Knight. He's still a Senator. He can be a Senator for a while. I like Stone a lot. I like Hoffman a lot. Brassard's proven me wrong in that I thought the Rangers won that trade hands down, and right now it's a saw-off. Turris has been fantastic. I think Burrows slots in well in the third line. The site that I used for this had him on the first line with Turris and Bobby Ryan. And I was like, no. That's a line that would not score. That's a line that would frustrate Turris a lot. Burrows is best suited on a third line with Pajot and Dzingel to force teams to play against the most aggravating line in hockey. If Burrows is with Pajot and Dzingel, they'll score more goals than expected, and they will frustrate teams beyond a shadow of a doubt in every single game. Burrows had sort of a renaissance after he went to Ottawa. You could tell towards the end in Vancouver that he didn't really want to be here anymore, and that I think all of his really close friends on the team were kind of gone, and I think he was okay with moving on, and that was a big part of it. He got a 2-year deal from Ottawa, which is why he was fine with going to Ottawa as well. He wanted to make sure it wasn't just a rental thing this year and a rental thing the following season as well. So smart on Burrows for getting that contract. We can debate about whether or not it was smart for Ottawa all we want. The fact is, they've got an agitating third liner. Their fourth line has Zach Smith, Tom Pyatt, and Nate Thompson, and Colin White's out there as the variable. Here's what I think Colin White does. I think Colin White goes to the American League. Follow me on this. If there's anybody hurt in the top 6, if MacArthur comes in and he gets hurt, and Clarke Macarthur's always going to have an asterisk next to his name as injury prone, because he's missed a lot of time. That's when White gets called up because he can play a top 6 role. If White's going to play a bottom 6 role, I say stick him in the American League and just let him pile up the points down there, and then he can come up and play. If MacArthur gets hurt, or Ryan, or anybody gets hurt in the top 6, he can step in. Don't lump him into the bottom 6. Don't do what the Canucks did with Virtanen. And I've said this, if a guy is a skill player and he's a top 6 guy and you don't have the ability to give him a top 6 position with your team, then don't put him in the bottom 6. Put him in the American League. Plenty of very good players have played in the American League. It's nothing embarrassing. And then in terms of their depth, they got McCormick, DiDomenico, Paul. I put up Gagne because, second rounder from a couple years ago. Sure, why not? And Chalapik. Because you got to have depth on this board for this to look good. And, people always say, well, what about this guy? What about this guy? And they're always mentioning other prospects. There are so many players that could be, maybe, could be, possibly here. It's a crapshoot. When I'm doing the depth charts that I put up for you guys, I'm really honestly looking here, and whatever fills out this 6 spots is just a guess. It's this top 12 that I'm more concerned with, because this is what we're going to see playing. And there aren't a lot of openings on almost any NHL team at the start of the year. Those openings show up later. And I can't predict who's going to get injured. If I could, this would be a much more interesting channel. Stay tuned November 1st as Clarke Macarthur is going to go down with a cracked collarbone. He'll be out for 6 weeks. Like, if I was a weatherman with this kind of thing, oh, wow, we'd have a whole different channel, wouldn't we? Let's move on to defense. Now, I don't like this. I'm going to say straight off, the site that I use, Roster Resource, has Oduya on the top 2. I don't like it. But here's the question, though. So Carlson is the best defenseman in the league, and Brent Burns, San Jose fans, quiet. The best defenseman in the league is Erik Karlsson. Victor Hedman fans, I get it. It's going to be a 1-2 punch between those two guys. May the best man win. Fight. But for my money right now, the guy who played on one foot, played into the third round, yelled and screamed at refs, yelled and screamed at teammates, had the mouth of a sailor through the whole playoffs. Erik Karlsson, and that fire and that desire to be the best is the reason why when everybody talks about, which Canadian team's going to win a Stanley Cup first? What if it's Ottawa? What if Edmonton and Toronto fans are arguing so much over who's going to be the greatest that Ottawa, with Erik Karlsson and Craig Anderson on some insane run, and forwards by committee, what if Ottawa does it? Nobody got further in the playoffs than Ottawa this spring. And yet everybody's arguing about, Montreal's the best for Carey Price. It's going to be Edmonton against Toronto. And I get why. But what if it's Ottawa? But you got to fix this thing first. So your top 6 is likely this. But I got to say, Claesson, I think, will play more games than Borowiecki. I do. I think Borowiecki is not going to play as many games as Claesson. I think Claesson played very, very well in the playoffs when given an opportunity. Sandpaper, skill. Depends on what you need in the lineup. If you're going up against Pittsburgh, you're going to want sandpaper. If you're going up against Carolina, you're going to want skill. But who really does play with Karlsson? And I went with Oduya there because Oduya is a pure defensive defenseman. What Mark Mathot was. Phaneuf is not that guy. You put Phaneuf with Karlsson, we could be looking at an epic disaster. Because Phaneuf, I think he's a better mentor than he is a top 2 defenseman at this stage of his career. And I think he could drag Karlsson down. Because Karlsson may be trying to cover for Phaneuf's mistakes. CC? No. You don't put a kid like Cody CC on the wrong side playing with Karlsson. So that's a non-starter. And then Borowiecki, absolutely not. Chabot, no. But could Chabot come in and take CC's spot in the top 4? It's possible. These guys will probably play similar ice time. If Chabot's ready. If Chabot's not ready, then Chris Weidman or Claesson go in there. It's a good top 6. It's not a great top 6. I know Ottawa was trying to trade Dion Phaneuf after he wouldn't waive and they lost Mathot. I mean, if you put Mathot in here instead of Oduya, and Phaneuf's out, and Oduya plays in that spot with CC, you've got a better top 6. You just do. You have a better top 6. But Oduya's come in essence, to try to replace Mathot. And we'll see how that goes for him. So, Karlsson is capable of 82 points, which covers up for some offensive issues up front. And it really depends on, I think Phaneuf is still capable of about 40 at best. And I think CC and Chabot could both score their share of points. There could be a lot of points from this blue line if everything falls their way. Up front, Hoffman, Turris, and Stone are all at least 20 goal scorers. Brassard, 20 goal scorer. So that's 4. 5 with Karlsson if Karlsson scores 20, and he could. And yeah, Bobby Ryan, if he plays like Bobby Ryan did in the playoffs, then yeah, he can score 20 goals. There's enough scoring here by committee that Ottawa makes the playoffs. And it should be no surprise to people who are following my series that I have Ottawa finishing 3rd. So for people at home, Senators fans, I'm talking to you guys, I am predicting this season that Ottawa finishes ahead of Montreal and Boston. Yeah, they finished ahead of Boston last year too. But I'm predicting it this year. I think that there's a lot of reasons to like Ottawa. I don't know that they get better, but I don't think they get worse. And that's really the key here. So yeah, that's Ottawa. And that's my view on Ottawa. Colin White may be the great, I don't want to say great white hope, that seems cheesy. But he could be the biggest variable for this team. So let me know what you guys think. Hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. And who ultimately plays with Karlsson? Is it Oduya or is it somebody else? Let me know in the comment section below. Thank you for watching, and I'll talk to you again soon.